I'm Brianna Kerbeyer.
And I'm Blake Sealer.
And we are relationship and intimacy guides.
This is a great topic to pick up on, the idea that resentment in a relationship is corrosive, that over time it'll wear down a connection. I think a lot of relationships after a certain point, once the new relationship energy and the honeymoon is worn off a little bit, it's like enough little things happen that we're not so happy about, but we don't fully clear them, and they build up into a residue of resentments.
And we really just consider that to be normal at this point. It's like people will use this term of like, oh, you're like an old married couple when people are bickering, as if bickering and irritation at a pretty constant low level is normal or ideal, but it really has been normalized to some way.
Yeah, it's kind of part of our relationship playbook, along with other things like compromise. Like I've heard this darkly humorous definition of compromise, that compromise is both parties being willing to split the resentment.
Neither person actually is getting what they really want.
Right. So they both agree to swallow some amount of like, I really don't like this. But what is resentment? Right? Like, what is it that is actually accumulating? For me, it's mostly unspoken truth and unacknowledged feelings. The things that we swallow and don't say because we don't want to rock the boat, and the feelings that can't be like properly validated or seen by our beloved, because to do so would hurt their feelings or go against their narrative of what's happening.
I think a lot of people fall into the trap of resentment because they don't want to get stuck processing all the time. And what I really see is most supportive is when people have a space and a place to use tools to clear resentments in an efficient way. The processing that people don't usually like is getting stuck in a cycle of going over the same thing again and again and again and not feeling heard or seen or validated. So finding spaces and using tools to really be able to slice through to clear resentment so that they don't fester. Those little ones, like it's not even a resentment at first. It's the little irritations. It's the low level annoyance on a daily basis. You're just watching me get into it like, oh.
It's like idiosyncratic fatigue, right? And the spaces and places that Brianna's talking about where we can go and clear our resentments most of the time is not in the direction of the person we have the resentment with. We need like either sounding boards, alone time, coaches, friends, people to hold that space for us. Otherwise, we end up turning our partner into our therapist and making it harder and harder to actually get to a place of completion because we can't reach agreement because we're having different experiences. Mm-hmm. And often that stuck sense of disagreement, or like we agree to disagree, that's like the kernel of resentment that just builds and snowballs over time. So what do we do about that? Well, I really like this idea of relationship engineering. We bring a lot of this into our couples coaching and the deep dive immersive work that we do, where we can go in and tinker with the script, like the relationship playbook that people are playing with, to try to help them see where some of their older ways of doing things or the older ideas of like how relationships are supposed to go, including some of these expectations around like compromise and bickering. And can we re-engineer that scaffold, that structure, so that they can create a different sort of relationship?
Mm-hmm. I think this usually needs to be done at least every 6 months or so. Like it doesn't always need to be done continuously, but I find that when people are first coming into a relationship and they're in the honeymoon period, there isn't so much of the traces of this, but it starts to pick up depending on how quickly the relationship has escalated as soon as real life is integrated into the relational dynamic. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that's moving in together. Sometimes it's choosing to be with family, but it could also be work transitions and shifts. It could be
opening a relationship,
aging family members. And then there will need to be, it's more real life stuff. Essentially, what I'm really saying there is that it's touching our core wounds. Our core wounds get activated, and then the irritations start to build because we're not well resourced.
And it's so easy to project that wounding and those feelings of insecurity onto the person we're closest with. And this is where our beloveds, our closest partners we end up resenting them for things that are not even about them. Like we just resent them for the discontentment we have about life, and they're just the closest person to have collateral damage.
And we've been talking about this in our own dynamic recently, like quite a bit, because we were noticing, we're like, what is really going on here when there's these moments of tension, irritation, annoyance that are starting to happen? And we recognize that resentment is just on the other side of that. Mm-hmm. It's right there. It's such a fine line. And the resentment is the thing that burns down the relationship, that like really is the relationship destroyer. Intimacy really goes out the window as soon as resentment starts to come in.
Yeah, trust and openness, and even just the easy, joyful thrill of being in connection with this person becomes harder because that buildup of resentment creates like a little activation barrier that we have to get over.
Mm-hmm.
So honoring that this is like a hallmark of any long-term relationship that just needs to be addressed, and yeah, creating spaces and having resources and guides to help you find ways to clear your resentments so that they don't build up, in my opinion, one of the best proactive relationship maintenance tools that you could possibly employ.
I want to add a piece here about individuation as well, and how necessary it is to have space, like physical space, and also space away so that we can continue to feel ourselves. I'd say that that's the challenge that I see a large percentage of the clients that we work with, is that they are afraid in many ways or resistant to finding and creating space in their dynamic, and to have individuation where they have their own things, their own plans, their own hobbies,
support structures,
their own support structures, even doing transformational personal development, self-development work. Often it's done in the couple, and then some of the pieces get hidden. Some of, it's like there's a pullback from it. So I really encourage individuation as a path to clearing resentments, because it's about getting to know oneself deeply. It's the decades of work that we do on ourselves, either while we're in relationship or before we go into our next relationship, that can really bring people through. I'll see people do decades of work on themselves, decide that they're solid and ready to get into a relationship, and then not touch self-development for a period of time because the honeymoon period is taking over their chemicals.
Good. It's so good.
So good. Why would I need to do anything? Why would I need to continue to track what's happening in my body? Like,
clearly I've made it.
I've made it. This is great. I've met the perfect person. I don't need to do anything else for myself. And then we watch them tank because they lost themselves in that time. And it's, can feel like starting at square one. Like, I have such a deep call in my body for people to reach out for support in their relationships when they're first getting into it.
Oh, please. And the opposite maybe of individuation that Brianna's speaking of is enmeshment, and even over enmeshment. I think one of the part of this relationship script that so many of us were given is that when we do enter that honeymoon phase, that infatuation phase, we naturally want to jump to, well, I like being with you so much, then we should just do everything together all the time. Let's move in together. Let's work together. Let's take clients together. Let's go on trips together. Let's do everything together. And eventually the individuals in a couple become so enmeshed that they start to lose their individuality. And I think that by itself is one of the core levers of resentment, that I might think that I have some resentment about you not doing the dishes when you said you were going to, but really I'm feeling a deeper loss of self. I'm compromising my very sovereignty to maintain this level of enmeshment with you. And again, we have a million and one examples that this is normal. But I think that what we see time again is this gradual erosion of one's sense of self, and even our ability to consent to what's happening in our world. Our ability to say yes and no is compromised by the presence of another being that we're trying to bounce every decision off of. Yeah, I think that's a recipe for resentment. I think it's a leak of our sovereign power. Yeah, if you recognize yourself in this description, if you can feel where a lack of individuation or too much enmeshment or the buildup of resentments or the barriers to intimacy are starting to grow and rise and get in the way of your relating, of the flow of love, the ask is to ask for help, to reach out to professionals or peers, somebody to proactively support you to process what's coming up in your relating, again, so you're not putting all of it squarely on the shoulders of your beloved. But yeah, like Brianna said, I wish I had asked for help. I wish I had found a coach. I wish I had found a teacher. I wish I had known some intimacy and relationship coaches at the beginning so that I could bring all of my unknowns to them and chart a path into relating that works better.